My name is Kimberly Baxter Packwood, and tonight we are going to paint fabric and paper using earth pigments. I have here, this is kind of a continuation from last Sunday's stream, which I recorded, and you can watch at your own leisure for the next 24 days or something like that. And then I'll move it over to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is kbaxterpackwood.com. I'll put that in the notes on my video. I moved my earth pigments closer into the camera view so that you could see the colors that we're working with. I have I think this one's the French, the yellow ochre, French ochre, white titanium buff, Verona green, Mayan blue, mixed reds, and raw umber, I do believe this is. All of the earth pigments are mixed with soy milk. I have them in paper cups, and I'm using natural bristle brushes so that the notice how I'm holding this brush here and it's not dripping, and that's what the natural bristle brushes do. They hold the moisture, they hold the liquid, the soy, and the pigments in the bristles, so you don't end up with slop on your substrate. I also have here some stencil brushes, a couple of different sizes, and I have a tray that I'm going to put some of my pigments onto, and then we're going to play around with the pigments onto the fabric. The trick with using stencils, and then a lot of people have used stencils, and I'm new to stencils. This is my design, Blackbird in Trees, that you can get from Stencil Girl Products. I'm one of their artists. If you click on the artist names and click on my name, Kimberly Baxter Packwood, this stencil and my other new stencil, Bird Stencils, will come up. The trick to working with stencils, and be it earth pigments in milk, soy milk, or paint, or whatever, is to not have your stencil brush overly wet. Otherwise you just end up with a big sloppy blob. And up until this year I haven't worked much with stencils, so this has been a real eye-opener to me. This is, it is not as easy as it looks. It takes practice and it takes patience, and people tell me I'm patient in the things that I do, and I'm like, yeah, just put me in front of some stencils with some paint and watch that patience go right out the window. So tonight we're going to play with the stencils and the earth pigments. I have a couple of rags over here. This is just plain white cotton fabric. If you were here before I started streaming, you saw me cut it straight off the bolt. Normally I wash my fabric, and I'm just going to pre-wash my fabric and mordant it, but I didn't do that tonight. And then I have a little rag over here, because again, I don't want it to be super sloppy. Let me move my mouse out of the way. Oops, where'd you go? For guests, hi. I see we have one person whose name I do not know, Ho Hum 2014, and then we have 7 guests. And then it's just a gentle tapping motion. And I'm just hitting my rag over here because I don't want large blobs of color, because this will spread and fox as it goes. So see, you can't really see what I have there. It would help if the video wasn't about 3 minutes behind. There's a couple of birds. And I'm just going to pat this out. And I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to put some of my Mayan blue down. And I'm going to grab another brush. You don't have to have a gazillion brushes, But it gets really loud in here when I start washing the brushes in my sink over there, because I have a commercial sprayer. I don't have a traditional faucet. If you're wondering what this black stuff is, I'm a slob. I didn't wash the paint off of my stencil. So there's just color upon color upon color building up. Hi, Dixie. Good, thank you. Dixie, is that your first name? Is it Dixie? Uh-oh, lose my stencil. And it's bleeding a little bit. I'm out of soy milk. Otherwise, one of the things I would consider doing is putting my pigments here on my tray. It's just a plastic painter's tray I picked up at a big box store. And then gently mix the earth pigments into the soy milk. Another technique you could use, and I may do that just depending on how frustrated I get and if the glue is actually over there, is you can also do this with hide glue. You can mix the earth pigments in with hide glue. That's what the Native Americans did, a couple hundred years ago, before we came up with all the modern binders and stuff. Cool, I got your name right. I'm horrible at names. So this blue color that you see here, it may look gray on your screen. This is Mayan blue. Hopefully these won't turn out too blobby. And they look like little blobby birds. But that's okay. We have an idea. I'm looking across the room in case you're wondering why I'm so quiet, because across the room I have a shelf filled with glues. And I think I spy a hide glue bottle. My husband keeps taking stuff out of my studio and he never brings them back. So, nope, this will work just as good if it'll actually come out of the bottle. If at first you don't succeed, there's always glue. And if glue doesn't work, there's always a hammer and a nail. It's just regular school glue. Oh yes, this is going to be wonderful. It's a good thing this stuff, pardon me, washes out. Boo-wah. Hi, Penny. When mixing your pigments and stuff, you really ought to consider wearing a dust mask. Or glue. And that blue pigment everywhere. You could also use gel medium, matte medium. This is just kids' school glue. It'll wash out. Maybe. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Oh, I have an idea. Okay, in case some of you are wondering what this crazy woman is doing, yes, I did study chemistry as an undergrad. So I have a propensity for experimenting in my studio. Go where others don't want to go. Oh yeah. That's much better. What would be ideal is to mix this up into a jar that's closed that I could seal and let the pigment melt into the... And I'm adding a little bit of the soy milk into this to loosen it up just a little bit. And this is going to be nice. Hi, Sandy. Thank you. I'm glad you guys can hear me perfectly. That was one of the problems I was having with the old computer and the old webcam is half the people could see me but not hear me. The other half could hear me but not see me. Then a lot of people, including myself, couldn't hear or see me when I would play it back and I would record it. So I went to the university and I picked up, I talked about this in my last video podcast live stream. I went to the university and picked up a new to me computer. It was used for not very much money, but it was much bigger than the one that I'd been using, which was actually built in 1999. And then the old web camera wouldn't work with it because the new computer has Windows 7 on it. So lots and lots of fun. And now I'm in the modern age. I have Windows 7 and a webcam that'll work with it. And if I sound like I have emphysema, I apologize, but I have allergies, and my allergies have been really, really bad this winter. So I've been having a hard time breathing. Okay, so wiping the glue and stuff out of my bristles. Some birdies. They actually look like birdies. And the little clumps, those will pop off when I wash them. Even though I'm using the glue. Cool. If you're talking about the print as in the chat, yeah. Chat seems to be an issue with Ustream. It's been an issue for years. I'll mix a little brown in with this. This is the raw umber. Getting a nice little greenish brown color here. Actually, I'll take a photo of that and I'll put it up on the blog later. Probably look at this tomorrow and think, egads, what was I thinking? Sometimes these ideas come out really nice though. Actually, another thing you could do with the earth pigments is if you don't want to mix with glue, because you don't want to ruin your favorite brushes, and I don't have a can of it down here, is to mix it with white shaving cream. Whoops, computer went to sleep. You want to use the white foam shaving cream, not the colored stuff, because the colored stuff will leave color on your fabric and your paper. I'm working with plain white cotton fabric here. It has not been washed. I cut it straight off the bolt. For those of you who are joining late. And this will be recorded. The other one was recorded on Sunday. And then I'll be moving them to YouTube here sometime in the next 2 weeks. Ustream only allows us to... I'll move my hand out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Ustream only allows storage for 30 days now. Unless you pay their premium. This is not going to be perfect. In fact, I really wish I had a can of shaving cream because that would actually work really nicely. you wonder why I've got my hand here? It's because I'm holding the stencil into place. So I'm rubbing pretty hard into the stencil. I have my brush is basically dry. What are my pigments? I have mixed red earths, yellow ochre, raw umber, Mayan blue, Verona green, titanium white buff, and French ochre. I bought them from a place called Sinopia out on the west coast. And the Mayan blue I purchased from a place that no longer sells it called Kremler, and that was from New York State. So I've had these a while. Oops, bending that other stencil there. And the stencil you can get from Stencil Girl Products. It's called Blackbirds and Tree. I made the design based on it's a fall evening after a particularly violent storm we had out here. You know, the kind that makes the international news, lots of tornadoes. The sun was coming through the clouds and it was backlighting an old cottonwood that was filled with all these red-winged blackbirds. So I took probably 200 photos of the blackbirds in the tree out of this marsh called Cooper Marsh. And then I turned one of the photos into this design. The pigments are natural. They're all natural earth pigments. I don't work with synthetic pigments unless they're in paints already, like golden paints or whatever. Those are the only kinds of synthetic pigments I work with. I have a lot of allergies to commercial products. The thing about working with, since this is soy milk glue and the pigments, you are going to get some bleed. You'll have a lot more control if you put the pigments in shaving cream. So there's going to be foxing underneath the stencil, and there's not a whole lot I can do about that. That's the nature of the beast with working with fabric is you get a lot more running and blooming foxing than you do with paper or primed canvas. And the technique using the shaving cream would be just the same as using like with the Tsukineko inks. And you could even do a faux marbling technique with the earth pigments mixed in with the... Sorry if you can't see this down here, but I'm down here on the end of the stencil and I don't want to rip the stencil. But you can also use the kids' school glue too, the stuff that's washable. What happens is after you let the fabric cure, whether you use the glue or the shaving cream, the fabric will still have to cure for three months. Well, 3 weeks to 3 months, depending on your climate. It's cold and it's not humid here right now, so I'm looking at 3 months. Once you wash them, the binder, be it soy milk, shaving cream, kids' glue, whatnot, will wash out, and what you'll have left is the pigment pattern. The pigment will bind permanently with the fabric. Actually, I kind of like this blue and this raw umber mixed together. It kind of has a weird, creepy, stormy tree look going. It's also a lot harder to do this on fabric than it is paper because the fabric keeps wanting to pull up underneath the stencil. Bunches up. But we'll get there. That's why I'm holding the stencil down as closely as I am. So I apologize if you're seeing more of my hand than you are of the technique. But basically it's a dry brush technique. You can use makeup sponges, daubers, paper towel wadded up, another piece of fabric, whatnot. You don't have to go out and buy some special equipment. Let's take a picture of this first. Pictures for the blog. Smile. Okay. Here we go. Now we have it on the fabric. Sweet. It didn't bleed nearly as bad as I thought it was going to. Natural pigments. I'm just checking Facebook real quick. I got a message that popped up. Could be somebody who's watching that isn't able to log in. Okay. Cool. Awesome. You can see it. So this is the pigment. I'm going to change the color of this up here. Didn't bleed nearly as bad as I thought it was going to, which is a good thing. I'll let this cure. This is going to be so much fun. And then wash it. And then I'm going to over dye it with natural dyes. I'll wash it and then mordant it. And you'd be amazed. I may even do, when I get around to doing that, this will be a few weeks out. I'll probably live stream it. You will be amazed at how wonderful the pigments stay, the saturation is, with proper curing. And yes, you can over dye it with natural dyes and go back into it with, I'm looking for my scissors, more pigments. So I don't know if you can see that better. I don't have a way to zoom in with this camera. One of these days I'm going to get one of those cameras that actually automatically zooms. And there we have earth pigments on fabric using a stencil. So don't let anyone tell you that it cannot be done, because yes, it can be done. Now I'm going to whip out this piece of paper here real quick that I cut off earlier. And we'll see it out. Just do the same thing, only I'm going to just do a small portion of the stencil. It's important that when your pigment piece is wet that you let it dry flat, not having other areas touch, because it will transfer the color. I didn't use a mordant on this. I have soy milk in with the earth pigments. And then I have a little school glue that I mixed in because it was too runny. I don't have any white shaving cream. With earth pigments, you don't need to use mordants. You just need a binder such as hide glue, soy milk. I'm trying to think of other binders. You can use egg whites, cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk, but you'd want to use the whole milk, not the 1% or the skim. I've known people to use yogurt and dung. So there's no end to what you can do with this. I'm looking for my rag. I've used eggs, yes, in the past on brain tan. I do quill work on hides, on brain tan hide, And so I've done a little bit of, because I'm wanting to do it more traditional, and some nations used eggs or egg whites and dung, buffalo, human, and along with urine and stuff to make glues. And then obviously there's the traditional hide glue. My glue's getting sticky. Let's see what we have here. Here you. Trying to keep my glue viable. The paper I'm currently working on is Canson mixed media paper, 98 pounds. Yes, the fabric is 100% cotton. It's prepared for dyeing. So technically it's not supposed to have any products on it like anti-stain, anti-wrinkle, etc. But you need to be really careful and check the bolt ends these days, because even though some places build the fabric is prepared for dyeing, a lot of the fabrics actually have coatings on them. And the results can be quite disappointing. So it's usually best, and I was kind of in a hurry tonight, and I wasn't sure where my pile of mordant fabrics were. I have a huge pile here somewhere in my wet studio. Usually I scour my fabric and I pre-mordant everything. Again, you don't need to mordant the fabric in order to do earth pigments, but I typically mordant my fabric before I do any application, so that way if I want to do natural dyeing later on, the mordanting process is already done. I don't have to stop and go back and go, okay, now did I mordant this or not? So I have a stack. Once you mordant the fabric, it's permanent. And PDF, yes, prepare for dyeing. And you usually have a stack of fabrics, 10, 20 yards that I've mordanted with alum set aside. And that way, when the spirit moves me and I'm ready to start dyeing, I can just dive into those dye pots. Same thing with yarn and fibers. I have a bunch of stuff that I mordant up. I actually throw them all in the same pot together. Somewhere on my YouTube page I have a thing on mordanting and scouring. I have videos. This kind of looks like rubber cement. This could be interesting and work as a frisk. Frisk is like a mask, a glue-like mask that you use in watercolor, that you can also use on fabric with great effects. Excuse me. So there's that. So I need to find a place to put this. Move on to my project from the other night. If you were with me on Sunday, you saw that just going to move this out of the way, applied Gouda to some silk crepe de chine fabric. What is pre-mordating? Thank you for asking. Glad you love it. It's a little bit cruder than what I normally do, the bird thing, but I need to get me some shaving cream and it'll be perfect. Pre-mordating is where you take your fabric off the bolt, you scoured it, washed it. I scour my fabric. First what I do is I wash my fabric in the washing machine to get any crap off of it that came on the fabric during shipping, when it was rolled onto the bolts, when it was taken off the looms in the industry, etc. I washed them, and then I take my fabric, and in 6-gallon stainless steel pots, I fill 2/3 of the way full with water and add in an ounce of alum per pound of fabric. And then I boil them for like 3 hours. And even though it's prepared for dyeing fabric, you'd be amazed at the gray slop that comes off the fabric. Take the fabric out, rinse it. I usually throw it through a rinse cycle in my washing machine. And if the water was really super nasty, then I rescour them again. I've only had one bolt of fabric from one company where I actually had to scour the fabric 3 times. Then the fabric gets washed in the washing machine, just through a rinse cycle. And then it gets put into a 6-gallon stainless steel pot with an ounce of alum sulfate per pound of fabric. So for like 3 yards of fabric, it's usually generally, depending on who I bought the fabric from, cotton fabric. We'll talk about cotton fabric. For 3 yards of cotton fabric, if I'm using like Kona fabric, it's really heavy and it's really dense. And quilters love it, and a lot of clothing people really love it, especially for making vests and stuff because it's nice and warm. I will use probably anywhere from 3.5 to 4 ounces of alum for the 3 yards of Kona fabric. For the lighter weight muslin fabric, or like this this fabric that I have here in my hands, and I forget who it is that I got this from. It's not Michael Miller fabric. It's Robert Kaufman fabric. It's lighter, so 3 yards of fabric, cotton fabric that's of the lighter weight variety. 1.5 ounces of alum for the 3 yards, because the 3 yards weigh about 1.5 pounds. And then I bring the fabric up to a boil on my crab cookers outside, and then I turn it down to a simmer, and it simmers for 3 hours. And I usually turn the heat off after about 3 hours, or sooner if it's really, really super hot outside. I try to do the bulk of my scouring and mortaring in July and August so I can take advantage of the heat that radiates off my driveway outside. And I'll let the fabric stay in the mortaring pot from anywhere from a day to 2 or 3 weeks. Take them out, rinse them in a regular rinse cycle in the wash machine, line dry them, and then fold them up, and then I have them ready for using in the future. And that's what pre-mortaring is. It's just preparing the fabric ahead. It's mortaring. It's just that you're making it now, and you may not get to that piece of fabric for 5 years. So I have my Mayan blue here. My brushes have been sitting in the pigment bottle since Sunday, so they're kind of blooming. This is silk crepe de chine with black Gouda resist. I want my brush to be kind of sort of dry-ish, i.e. not dripping, because I want to keep my pigments inside of these little shapes here on the fabric. I didn't get my Gouda resist very tall, so I'm running the risk of the pigments bleeding out over the Gouda if I don't keep my brushes dry enough. When this is properly cured after 3 weeks or so, if it's me, it could be anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 years, I will wash this. The black lines will remain behind because this is a black Gouda, and the pigments will remain, and the glues in the Gouda and the soy milk in the pigments will wash off the fabric. The protein in the soy milk is what glues the pigments to the fibers. Pigments sit on the fiber surface, they don't bond with it, so they need some sort of glue to keep them into place. I have one over here that I also did on Sunday that has clear Gouda, and when I'm done with it and I wash it out, the white lines on the fabric the natural color of the fabric will remain as white lines behind. This is starting to puddle there, so I need to be careful of that. And I just occasionally dip my brush into my cup and deeply to pick up the pigments off the bottom. So the cups of pigments need to be stirred infrequently. And then I'm just rolling my brush like this inside to get the excessive out. You can kind of sort of see the pigments going back down inside. You're welcome. I have the information on my website, prairiefibers.com, on mortarting and scouring the fabric, and I have videos on YouTube under K. Baxter Packwood channel that you can watch on the topic too. And then there are my blogs, and I've got a ton of information on my blogs about mortarting and scouring and stuff. And if you find all that helpful, I have ebooks available on my website, videos, if you really want to get into this. And then there's my Natural Surface Academy, where people have access to me basically 24 hours a day. Heaven forbid I ever die. The color I'm currently painting with is the Mayan Blue. I hope that's showing up on the blues showing up. Sometimes the blues tend to show up as grays. I love this French ochre. So again, I'm just twirling my brush, getting the excess soy milk out because I don't want to leave blobs all over my fabric. And this piece is going to be a lot of fun to stitch up after it's done curing. Sometimes I've been known, after I paint a piece like this up and cure it, I've been known to go back and dye them, turn them into bundles, and then over dye them. And the pigments actually stay in place and often block some of the dye because of the soy milk protein that's left behind. And I get really pretty results. First time I did it by accident. I didn't realize until after I'd made the bundle that I had accidentally used one of my pigment painted fabrics, because I had picked it up and the back side was facing me and it wasn't as bright on the back side as it was on the front side. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. We'll see what happens. I did that with a piece of fabric I had screen printed with natural dyes too. And actually it exceeded my expectations. I was very, very surprised. Very, very excited. Then I started doing it intentionally. And then people asked me how I was doing that, so I wrote a book about it. It's a happy accident. Love this French ochre. It's so pretty. The fabric is stretched on a frame that my husband made for me. It's approximately 12 inches by 12 inches interior dimensions. It's about 2 inches tall. Well, this is what they look like on the back. My husband made those little braces for me and stuff. He's a woodworker, and I tell him what I want, and he asks me for dimensions, and he's a sweetheart and he makes them for me. So I have several sizes. Well, no, don't go to sleep. Computer's going into hibernation mode, sorry. Yes, you need to use the natural bristle brushes with the natural pigments. Not because they're natural, but because the natural bristle brushes, well, as you could see, it's not leaking. Or whenever the video catches up. It's not leaking. It holds the pigments in the soy milk. They wick up the natural bristle brushes. The same thing when you're using the natural dye extracts to paint fabric with, which I'll probably get into in a couple of weeks. I'll do a live stream on that. And it holds it. When I was using the synthetic bristles, I'd get little blobs here and there, and things were leaking and stuff, and it just wasn't so happy. And if you were up close, you could see that I've got, even though the brush looks like it's dry, the bristles, I've got little puddles forming on the silk fabric. So it holds quite a bit of liquid. So I can actually paint quite a bit of stuff before I have to load my brush again. These are just inexpensive brushes I bought in a large economy pack from the big box store like Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's. You've probably seen the brushes there. Do I ever use herbs and flowers for dyeing? Yes, I use nettles for dyeing with. Safflower, I've used, it's very fugitive. St. John's wort, I've used. Safflower, the pink, St. John's wort and safflower both are dyes where they're a double dye. You start out with, and it yields a yellow dye, and then you take that off and you put the flowers back into a new vat and you get pink. The yellow is permanent, the pink is not. But yes, I have used flowers, and I'm trying to think what the other flower was that I used that was permanent. Most flowers have anthocyanins in them. Same thing with berries, and they're not permanent. So I just tell people to enjoy their flowers and their berries. A lot of the leaves of flowers and herbs are permanent, but you're going to get greens and yellow greens. So people think that when you have a purple flower, you're going to get purples. That isn't always necessarily the case. Or you may have purple for a couple of weeks and then it turns to gray and then it just disappears altogether. Oh, these are starting to look like my poppies. Cool. I have a poppy design I've been working on for years. I may have to add more Gouda to this. I love happy accidents. Yeah. Can you guys see the blue? I have a bad habit of getting really quiet when I'm working, so if you have questions, fire away. And remember, no questions are too silly or too dumb. One of the things I can do, and before we leave tonight I'll bring it up and show it to you, is after this is dried, like tomorrow for instance, I could come back down here and add more yellow and more blue on top of these colors. And what they will do is those colors will bond to the colors underneath, so that when I wash them after the fabric is properly cured, yes, that really was a fruit fly you just saw land on my fabric. They are attracted to the soy milk. Is come in and add more colors on top, maybe even a different color pigment on top of the French ochre. and all kinds of wonderful things happen. And it just deepens the color saturation. So it's just slowly building in layers. I have about 10-15 projects going at once, and then come down each day and spend an hour or two and painting and adding more color. You just have to remember to properly cure. Okay, I'm going to grab this color over here. So I may run past 9 o'clock if you guys want to still hang around. Got some red. I love this mixed earths. It's called Mixed Red Earths. So I'm not really sure what the red earths are, but I have around here somewhere some Italian red earth, and I have some from Czechoslovakia, and oh my, is it ever beautiful. I just need to locate my bottles. Oh, yep, now it's catching up. You can see me putting the red earths on. What is Gouda? Gutta. Gouda is a resist, like a glue, that's designed specifically for blocking off sections of fabric so that the color of the fabric underneath remains intact after dyeing and or painting. It is typically used on silk fabrics, and silk painters use it a lot. Yes, that's the proper spelling. This Gouda is tinted with a black pigment so that when I wash it out, the black lines will remain, which by the way is just so cool. It took me forever to find a black Gouda. Gutta. I realize I make it sound like I'm talking about cheese. I have the Gutta cut that I have. It's PBO brand, and it comes in black, white, clear, silver, gold, copper, and platinum. I think platinum, or maybe it's bronze. It comes in like 6 or 7 colors. I don't recall if it comes in red or navy blue, although that would be really, really cool. I have this piece over here I worked on Sunday. It's down here on the floor. It has dried up nicely. Tomorrow I think I'm going to work some more color into it. What the Gouda Resist is doing is, when you apply it properly, nice thick line, is it's keeping my pigments from bleeding outside of that line. It acts as a boundary. It also helps if you keep your brush relatively dry. A lot of silk fabric painting uses dry brush techniques. You work from light to dark, just like with watercolor. So it's a lot of the same techniques, ideas. Twirling my brush in my cup to pick up pigment from the bottom. I'm going to get me some shaving cream tomorrow, and I'm going to play with this Blackbird's Entry stencil again with the shaving cream and the earth pigments. My husband has a full beard, so I don't keep shaving cream on hand on a regular basis. I was doing a lot of faux marbling with it using Tsukineko inks and fabric paints onto fabric and paper once upon a time. But my last time I tried getting stuff out of the can, it just came out like this gloopy stream of weird looking gray stuff. They don't come from plants. The pigments come from various clays in the ground. They're mined from places all over South America and Europe. Most of my pigments, the mixed red earths, would have come from like France, Italy, Czechoslovakia. The Mayan blue comes from Central America. This French ochre came from France. The yellow ochre probably came from a quarry in the United States. That just comes from, as it sounds, it comes from an ochre clay straight out of the ground. The raw umber most probably came from either Italy or the United States. The Verona green came from Germany. The titanium buff white came from either Germany or Poland or the Ukraine. The place I buy my pigments from is called Sinopia. I don't know if they're still in business or not. I bought my pigments several years ago. But they list on their website, and sometimes on the label, the raw sienna came from Italy. That's not yellow ochre, I'm sorry, it's raw sienna. And it'll tell you where they come from. It says on the bottle most of the time. There are also codes on here like JTCLES, and in their catalog, those codes have a designation, and they will tell you, so you'll know if they're toxic or not by the designations that are on them. Sunday I'll be working with natural dyes. I'll be screen printing and deconstructive screen printing with natural dyes, and those are plant-based. The pigments are all come from either clays, ochres, or various minerals. I have one over there on the shelf somewhere called ultramarine, and that's actually here it is. I didn't mix it up because it is really expensive. This comes from Afghanistan. Or at least that's what their catalog said. Anyway, and it is really, really, really expensive. It's also gorgeous. And since I wasn't sure how much I was going to get done, I didn't mix any up. Okay, so I probably want to put a blue in there. That poor guy's just horrible looking right here. He's so beat up. This was the first one I made when I opened up my tube, if I remember correctly. And Gouda coming out of the tube was needed a little further squeeze. I ended up with some blobs and blips. Okay, I want to paint that one blue. Paint this one red. So pigments, not dyes, correct. And we'll paint that one red. And we're going to pick up our blue here in a minute. I will probably paint the background on this titanium buff white. Sounds like you wouldn't have much in the way of color, but yeah, actually you do. Come on, computer, no falling asleep. I have a problem with computers that are insistent on hibernating. I'm going back in with the Mayan blue. And I'll probably paint the background with Verona green and titanium buff white. I probably will not do that this evening. Okay. I used the squeeze tube Gouda. It's a PBO brand, and the lid comes off and there's a fine point, and I just used it like I would a marker, just drawing the lines. Oh. Let's see if I can do that with this and not make a huge mess of things. I'm going into my cups now, my poppy heads, with a little bit of raw sienna. Add some highlights. So it's not so monochromatic looking. Add some shadow lines. Make it look like flowers you'd actually see out in the wild. Like I said, I'll come back in tomorrow and add more color. Here's my French ochre. It says that my moderator is a Ustream bot. That's interesting. Get these little guys done. Then I can show you what Sunday's piece looks like. It looks really cool. All right. So tomorrow I'll finish this piece. I'll photograph it, put it on the blog, and I'll paint the back of this, the background with this titanium white. So I need to finish using up these pigments. It's really cold in my studio right now. So the milk isn't curdling, but it has, oops, that ain't gonna work. Get off of there. I hit a tube of Gouda and it flipped onto my piece, which is gonna cause wicking. Okay, so here's the piece I did with the stencil. On cotton fabric and the paper, and I may do a refresher on Sunday evening. We'll see if I can get the shaving cream, or I could just record it and post it on the channel. This is what I made last Sunday. Pardon me. Well, I didn't make the whole thing, because what happened was I was down here cleaning, my husband and I, getting ready for Sunday stream, and in a pile on the floor, we found a piece that I had been looking for. I found it in my photos, and had wondered what had happened to it. And there it was on the bottom, on the floor, face down, of course, on the concrete basement floor, and it had probably been there for like 3 years. So this past Sunday, I streamed, and you can see the recording on the channel, and I filled in the background area and added the stripes, and thank you. Yeah, I love the birds too. The birds are from my stencil Blackbird and Tree, available through Stencil Girl products. You can find my name, Kimberly Baxter Packwood, there. And so I'm going to be working on this over the course of the next week or so, and see about getting this finished up, and getting it cured, and I'm going to stitch it. It is Pigments, Earth Pigments on Silk du Peony. I don't know if you can see that or not. If you can see the texture. Switch over to the other page. Well, there we go. I'll put it in view. How about that? And it's very, very, very heavily textured fabric, Silk du Peony, if you've never worked with it before. So, one of the things I wanted to do before I quit tonight was add some of this titanium buff white. Let's see. Looks like your comment got cut off. Yeah, I was going to add some of the titanium buff white in between here. It has a nice chamois cloth color. And yes, I am deliberately going over into the French ochre. And I'll just keep adding and layering the pigments on this piece until I've decided it's finished. And then we'll see where it goes. It'll get stitched. No, the pigments don't leave a heavy hand for the stitching. I wondered this same thing when I first started, but I was actually pleasantly surprised it did not. One would think it would, but it didn't. So the black on here, if you go back and you watch the video from last week, I did this several years ago, and this is actually, the black is a concrete dye that I picked up at a big box store. It was just plain straight iron oxide. Hi. So, anyway, did you guys have any questions? I'm trying to think, was there something else I worked on? Oh yeah. I also worked on this last Sunday, and it is dried. Thank you for coming. I'm going to have to go in a little bit too, because I need to spend some time with my husband. And I made this last Sunday. I was just playing with some pigment stripes on the silk crepe de chine fabric. So anyway, I'm going to stop recording this.